What do the best trios for the Pacers this year tell us about the team, the lineups they're playing, and maybe some tweaks they could or should make in the future? Plus, some short interviews today with Dakota Mathias and Quenton Jackson. It's all coming on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, much stuff I want to discuss in a show that's going to be a very similar format to one I did like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. We're going to start by running through some fun lineup data, getting into some information that's even more relevant now than it was when I did this a couple weeks ago, and then do some interviews at the end. I got some positive feedback on those. It's hard to do them all the time. It takes a lot to go right, but in this case it did. So we'll start by looking at trios. A couple weeks ago we looked at duos, what that told us about the Pacers and Andrew Nembhard and the starters and subs and Jarris Walker. Today we're going to do trios and land on some similar conclusions and some slightly different ones. Anything more than trios just feels like you're doing a lineup, and anything less than duos is obviously just an individual. So duos and trios are the only things that I like to dive into, but we have a lot of Jarris Walker and Andrew Nembhard-based discussions to have today. And then we'll talk with Quenton Jackson. I talked to him after a Mad Ants game like a week and a half ago. And we'll talk about how the two-way guys looked down there. And then I'll talk with Dakota Mathias. Many of you might remember him from Purdue. And he's been, to me, the best unaffiliated player with the Mad Ants this season as he tries to work his way back to the NBA. You can read more on him and his journey right now in Forbes. Let's get going with the trios. Oh, one more thing. I mentioned this yesterday, and it came out yesterday. Something Locked On new doing this year, this calendar year, is the squad show. So lots of hosts who do podcasts for Eastern Conference teams will get together every week, talk about the biggest topics in the East. We talked a lot about the Celtics, the Sixers, Jimmy Butler on the first one. I was very late to the party. So those will come out once a week. It will not be a Locked On Pacers episode, but it will be in this feed. If you don't like it, just don't watch it. But it is really interesting. People did like the conversation. But the people who did see it and hated the title, I did get feedback that will be fixed in the future. I changed yesterday, so if you saw it earlier, look at it now. It's much better. All right, let's talk about trios. Apologies for the much too long intro today. Did not get into the discussions quick enough. So, three-man lineup data. What does this reveal to us? What combinations in trios play well off of each other? Obviously, there's some players that we know on the Pacers fit well together, that play well together, that skills are additive. And I think that's important to note that the lineup data does bear that out in a strong way. But it also revealed something to me that was the opposite of what I expected, one, and we'll definitely get into that. And two, a reminder, the Pacers starting five has been so good that basically every combination of three players that's in that starting five has a good net rating as a trio. For example, the Pacers, I did lineups with over 100 minutes this year because anything less than that is too small sampling. But the best trio this year has been Siakam, Nembhard, and Mathurin. Three starters that have paired well together. And they had early season success too when Mathurin and Siakam were the best things going offensively for the Pacers, even before Nembhard really saved the Pacers season. So it makes sense that group would have a good start and a good run right now. They are powered by good offense and defense. 116 offensive rating, 98 defensive rating. That's exceptional, right? And you're going to see that a lot at the top if you go look up the best Pacers trios this season yourself, right? The second best group also makes sense. Siakam, Nembhard, and Haliburton. The Pacers' two best players, and they're most impactful by the on-off numbers this season. Turns out, when they all play together, really good things happen for the Pacers. Their offense and defense is awesome. Turner, Nembhard, Haliburton's next. Turner, Siakam, Nembhard is next. Nembhard, Haliburton, Mathurin's next. You get the gist of the top of this list. If you are among the starting five this year, basically especially since the start of December when Nembhard returned, you're going to be on this list, and some combination of three. And that's not actually that revealing, right? All these lineup groups are within 4 points per 100 possessions and say the same thing. Hey, if you start, you're doing really well, and the guys who started the season really well when the team was not playing well have fare better here, and the guys that didn't fare worse. The worst trio of the starters, I believe, is Turner, Nembhard, and Mathurin. What's interesting beyond that is the groups that do not feature all three starters or feature all bench players. In fact, the top group that doesn't have a starter at all actually is all three bench players. It's TJ McConnell, Thomas Bryant, and Ben Shepherd. And this immediately made me go, whoa, that's stunning to me, because Thomas Bryant came to the Pacers in mid-December, which is relevant for this because the sample's not very big, but it's also relevant because TJ McConnell hasn't been playing particularly awesome in that stretch, right? I did a whole segment on that, and he had a great game in his last game, and I think everybody expects the track record of TJ McConnell to bounce a little more towards normalcy, again, as he starts to finish these shots. But to see that they have a bench group that has been that good or that important is very interesting to me. And what stands out to me about those three guys is, one, they play an obvious role, so they fit in any group, right? McConnell is a ball handler, Shepherd as a 3-and-D guy, Bryant as an energy 5. That's all great. But I just nailed it with Bryant. The thing that makes them all work to me, they're all the energy dudes with the bench. I guess Toppin really is they're all energy guys. But those three in particular stand out as just like all hustle all the time kind of players. And it's not surprising to see that they have a bananas offensive rating and a good enough defensive rating, and their assist percentage is pretty solid, and their true shooting percentage is pretty solid. Like, that's a good group, and that has been good for the Pacers. They've been able to get to that because we'll get to TJ McConnell, but the three-man lineup data reveals a lot about him. But it also says that, hey, they should probably try, if they're going to play that group, to get to them at some point, right? There is something to that group working together. I think Myles Turner provides these things too, but Bryant's spacing has helped in a way that they didn't have with backup fives before he got there. Ben Shepherd is obviously making lots of threes this season and has helped every group he's in. But the very next group for the Pacers in terms of trios is McConnell, Siakam, Mathurin, which also stood out to me. Not because it surprised me. Like early in the season, if you watch this team at all, McConnell and Siakam were the only thing going very often for this Pacers team, right? When Pacers were playing bad, those two were reliable. They were the best duo by far. When they were on the court together, the team did well, and Mathurin was playing well early in the season. It's not surprising to me that trio is there. It is surprising to me that so far, all the trios with McConnell do not feature another point guard, right? Because that is when I think of the Pacers as something they try to do. In fact, the group I just said, McConnell, Siakam, and Mathurin, is the last group with an over 8 net rating of any trio we're going to get to today. And we'll come back to the best groups in a second. But if you flip to the worst Pacers trios this season, the top two both feature McConnell. It's McConnell, Jarris Walker, Ben Shepherd, and McConnell, Myles Turner, Jarris Walker. And yes, Jarris Walker also in both of those. But that also made me do a little thing with my face and go, that's interesting. And then the next couple groups also feature Jarris Walker, Haliburton, Mathurin, Jarris Walker, Pascal, Siakam, Tyrese, Haliburton, Quenton Jackson after that. But then the one that really made me go, whoa, TJ McConnell, Myles Turner, and Tyrese Haliburton as a trio this season. 149 minutes, 113.3 offensive rating. That's okay. 123 defensive rating. Yikes, huh? How is that group not playing well? And that group often is like in the game late in first quarters, or is in the game, in third quarters or early in second quarters. There's lots of times that trio can tend to overlap for the Pacers pending their front court rotation for a given night. And that one immediately jumped out to me because something I say a lot and something the Pacers clearly like to rely on is 2 point guard lineups. And it does let them play the style that they should keep trying to play. It's proven to have success on the offensive end. McConnell is a pesky enough defender and Nembhard a good enough defender that they can get away with that, even with size disadvantages all the time. I'm not saying they should get away from it, but it did jump out to me that was the case. And so I went to check the on-off combos for TJ McConnell and Tyrese Haliburton. And every combo is better when those two are on the floor together, TJ McConnell and Tyrese Haliburton. 312 minutes this season, the Pacers have a minus 2.8 net rating. Every other combo of just one or neither of them is better than that. Just Haliburton, no McConnell's plus 2.85. Just McConnell, no Haliburton's minus 1.35. And neither is, albeit in a very small sample, plus 0.23. So that was very fascinating to me. The defense, when both those guys are out there, has been terrible. Terrible. And not even on crazy, fluky appointed shooting. 38.79 is pretty high, but it's not so out of the realm of possibility that you think, well, this is fluky. So something about that group has just not worked for the Pacers this year in a way it has in the past. But their offense has been bananas. 122.9 offense is exceptional. So the question you have to ask is, does this trios exercise, where two players that naturally play together every night basically in the Pacers rotation and have had success before. Let's go back to last season and run the same query with the same two players, right? If you just plug in the TJ McConnell, Tyrese Haliburton duo last season, it was one of the best things they had often, and McConnell was better last year as an individual, obviously. But in 220 minutes, the Pacers that had both those point guards on the floor. The Pacers net rating was plus 15.97. obviously unsustainable, but their offensive rating was 131. Insane. Their defense was 115.07 with ridiculously lucky opponent threes last season, to be clear. So that made me go, okay, that's probably an outlier, but something to look out for going forward actually is, do the McConnell-Haliburton minutes start to stabilize? And if they do, that could be a good thing for the Pacers' rotation and bench, because that part of their game has typically gone wrong. People have talked endlessly recently about how bad this team is closing quarters and games. Well, half the quarters of the game are closed with those two guys in tandem on the floor. So if the Pacers can find better ways to defend with that group, and it's not just those two players, right? They're often on the floor with some combination of Toppin, Shepard, Walker, and Bryant. Like, that's not an awesome defensive unit by any means. So if they can find ways to just defend a little better with that five, I think some of their worst trios are going to prop up. The rest of their best groups, their above five groups, all feature some combination of Nembhard, Siakam, or Haliburton, or even Turner. Like, the next group is the next trio of starters in Turner, Siakam, Mathurin. But another one that was interesting was McConnell, Mathurin, Shepard's been very good. I just think McConnell and Shepard have a great dynamic together. Really, those two and Toppin pair really well together statistically. So the best groups all have that. Now, the opposite end, I did talk about the point guard tandem that I want to talk about. So just keep an eye on the McConnell-Haliburton duo and see if either lineups featuring those two players starts to look awesome very soon, or if something continues to be wrong, where the numbers continue to say, hey, even though anecdotally this looks okay, it's not going well. Look to see what you think could go differently, right? Do they want to play them at a different time, like have McConnell come in earlier? You know, he hasn't been the first sub nearly as often of late. Or do they want to have someone else like Siakam be the star who closes the first quarter, but then what does that look like for the rest of the group, right? And obviously Siakam's been rock solid this season. They don't need to change anything for him. The other thing that's very obvious from the negative side of things is how many trios Jarace Walker's in, and why a lot of those groups is held back by a bad offensive rating number. Jarace Walker obviously playing much better of late, no doubt about that. This is not to point at him and go, he's been playing bad. But there is, for a guy who is making his three, certainly, right, but doesn't get that sort of respect as a shooter yet, I would say. For the season, Jarace Walker at 39.8% from deep on 2.5 attempts per game. That's good, but if you only play 76 games in your career and you at most take 2.5 per game, or that's what he is at right now, 2.5 per game, you're not going to get that kind of panicky respect from defenses yet. So he doesn't provide that level of spacing yet, and his defense, well improved, is still kind of not quite at the level that a lot of people thought it could be in the draft, or even after he got picked. I'm one of those people. So I do still think Jarace Walker is going to be a good player. Like, he's been playing very good for the last month, the best he's ever played. His consistency has flown way up. But I think that there are a lot of lineups, because of what he is and isn't, where he can be a clunky fit, right? He probably, I'd have to think about this. He and McConnell are probably the two Pacers that have the most fit-related concerns, for lack of a better term, on the Pacers roster, as in you have to think about who is with them. And not a lot of other guys don't really fit that. Like, Siakam can play with anybody. Nesmith can play with anybody. Nembhard, Turner, they can play with anybody. Haliburton can obviously play with anybody. They have lots of players who can fit with anybody, but they have a few guys who can't. And so that does not surprise me now when you look at their worst trios and see both of their top two worst have both McConnell and Walker, the guys who probably require, because of, in McConnell's case, his lack of shooting and lack of size, and in Walker's case, his lack of shooting and earlier in the season, consistency, and a little bit of defense for him too. You see the worst trios for those guys. And so keep that in mind, too, as you think about, what the Pacers should do rotationally, right? When McConnell is out there, they have to think about how they're putting this all together. And when Jarace Walker's out there, Rick Carlisle has to think about how this is all put together. But also keep in mind that of the Pacers' worst 7 trios this season, every group with a minus 10 net rating or more in over 100 minutes, every single one of them either has Jarace Walker or Quenton Jackson in it. And Quenton Jackson pretty much got all of his burn when the Pacers were playing their worst this year. We'll actually hear from him later on this podcast, and doesn't play anymore. And that's not to say he was bad. He was actually quite a story for the Pacers this year, but he played at a time when the team was playing bad. So that's not surprising to me. The lowest group that doesn't have either of them has McConnell. It's that group I just said with Turner and Haliburton. So the first group with no McConnell, Walker, and Quenton Jackson is Tyrese, Haliburton, Ben Mathurin, and Ben Shepherd, right? And that is like the 15th worst trio. So all this to say, if you're going to look out for Pacers rotational tweaks, I would start with those two guys. Not saying neither of them should play. I think they both are deserving of minutes given the way they've played this season. But start with McConnell and Jarris Walker and think about how you personally would reassign maybe what they're doing, right? I think that what I would keep doing, what they're doing with TJ McConnell, certainly. I think that has historically shown to work well in past seasons, and he will bounce back, and those groups with Haliburton will do a little bit better. As for Jarris Walker, I just think it's about plugging him into the groups that have really good ball handling on them already so that there's good offensive floor out there because I do believe his defense will get better. So pairing him with Haliburton as often as possible would be great. I think that'd be a good way to keep him kind of in the right zone on the offensive end. And he's a guy that other teams love to zone against too. So it's going to be important for him to either take more threes or be more willing to get rid of the ball quickly when it comes his way. And then as he improves as a defender, I think having him with Turner as well could be helpful for this Pacers team. But that is my way too long-winded analysis on trios and what we've learned from the numbers and what watching this team and their rotation says. And they'll have rotation questions to figure out once Nesmith returns too, and Jarris Walker could certainly be a part of this. So if you see his minutes decrease, think back to this conversation as well, even though I do think he has done enough to warrant still playing. He's played very well of late. Let's move on to talking about the Pacers 2A guys in the G League and just straight up hearing from one of them in Quenton Jackson before we talk with the best unaffiliated player on the team in Dakota Mathias. Before we get to any of that, though, we need to talk about Gametime. I love going to live events. I know many of you do too, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy, anything. It's a blast. And one of my favorite memories growing up, attending live sporting events, specifically going up to Mackey Arena, even though I ended up going to IU. Loved going to Mackey as a kid. Energy and excitement, unforgettable. Now, Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to only show you incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you popped in, you can check out Pacers homestand when they get back from their Paris/Disney on Ice road trip. They got the Pistons coming up. That should be fun. And many other things. They're super deals. Gametime Picks will find amazing deals for any Pacers game that you could pop into. And the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make your second listen Locked On Suns or Locked On Jazz. Very interesting trade involving 4 draft picks between the Suns and Jazz was at least agreed to according to reports yesterday. I'm not sure if that's become official by the time this podcast is out, but I want to hear all about that because it certainly shows some interesting things could be coming for the Phoenix Suns and the Jazz. Danny Ainge, it's a great trade, I think, for the Jazz. I loved how the Jazz and Hornets made out in their recent trades with the Suns, even though I get why the Suns did both of them. Let's keep it rolling here in Pacerland by talking with Quenton Jackson. Quenton Jackson, Pacers 2A guy, obviously was very important for the team earlier in the season at times as a starter. It was fun to write that story about him. He had a 24-point game in Houston, was taking on the best defensive assignments for the other team very often on a 2A contract. That is a rare thing to see a player do, and has really come into his own with the Pacers organization. Remember, averaging 5.7 points per game on 51% from the field, 37.5% from 3 with the Pacers in 18 games this year. He did well more than what you can expect from a 2A contract player with the team this season, even though his impact certainly tapered off in his last couple appearances. But, I mean, for those of you who've listened for a long time, you'll remember that before Summer League, I think this guy's going to impress a lot of you, and his first game was terrible. I think you'd admit that. The other 4 were very good, and he got his 2A again for this year and has immediately picked up and shown that he can play. In the G, he has led the Mad Ants in scoring this season. I don't know if he's been their best 2A player with the Mad Ants. Enrique Freeman, we'll get to in just a second, has been tremendous, but 20.3 points, 5.4 rebounds, 5.0 assists for Quenton Jackson down there. He's making 44% of his threes in the G League and 49% of his shots in total. It's so fascinating to watch him play because the way his intensity goes and the way his defense is kind of the thing that gets him into a game, he really picks it up later in the action, right? Not that he's a slow starter. He's still helping. He's still doing good things. But the way, like, especially because he's not the primary point guard with that group, he really feels out a game and then figures out where he can just go. And then the second half, it feels like he just takes off and can create his own shot whenever he wants. So he's been playing very well, as has Enrique Freeman. Enrique Freeman, I think, has been the Pacers' best two-way player in the G League. 18.7 points, 7.3 boards, and 3.7 assists. 59% from the field, 33% from deep. That doesn't sound like a good three-point percentage. He's taking 3.5 per game. He's taking more than Quenton Jackson. Right, he is certainly working on expanding the range, and even it's going in enough-ish. He looks very comfortable getting him up. People who also watch the Mad Ants were tweeting at me during the game. He took 4 or 5, and he made 3 of them. People were like, he just gets them up. He does. The shot looks good, and he just is a beast inside. He has like 3 or 4 dunks every game he plays. His rebounding is very solid. He just looks awesome, right? He looks very comfortable with the ball. His defensive communication's very good. You heard him on this podcast, looking great. And then Tristan Newton got waived. Obviously, earlier this month, he's with Minnesota now. So their new two-way player is Ray J. Dennis. I talked to Mad Ants head coach Tom Hankins about him. But everybody who's talked about Ray J. Dennis describes him as a guy who makes others better. And I totally agree with that. He's an awesome passer, 8.3 assists per game in the G League. I mean, again, same thing. The limited people who do watch these Mad Ants games all tweet at me and say the same thing. Oh, yeah, he looks great. I totally agree. And he's gotten some appearances with the Pacers, right? He did score for them. He's in Paris with the team right now. But the thing that is interesting is you call him a pass-first point guard, and I would agree with that. You call him a guy who makes others better, and I'd agree with that. He's averaging 18.5 points a game, right? That is third of all players who've played with the Mad Ants this year. Their top 3 scorers are all the two-way guys. He's above Newton in points and assists per game already, and is only 0.4 behind in rebounds. Not to say he's been like so clear of what Newton did. I thought Newton was fine. I like do-it-all kind of guards, but I do think Ray J. Dennis has played better and certainly has skills that make it more obvious what his path to being something in the NBA is right now. And I think that was a good. It does not show well for the Pacers draft last year, but it does show well for their ability to find two-way players out in the market. So that is the two-way update. We'll talk about unaffiliated players in just a second. But before we do any of that, let's hear from Quenton Jackson.
You like getting some G assignments after? I know early in the season you were playing a bunch, but to actually get some minutes, reps, get playing again?
Yeah. For me, it's all about just hooping, playing basketball, basketball player, But at the same time, I love being up at the top, supporting my teammates. It's bigger than me, So I just try to bring energy however the organization needs me, whether that be upstairs with the Pacers playing, upstairs with the Pacers not playing, downstairs with the G playing, or whatever, however it is. I'm all about winning, so whatever I could do to help win.
Has your perspective down here changed at all after starting games, getting the assignments you had with the NBA group this year?
Kind of a little bit. I think our first couple years, I was more, I don't want to say hungry, but I was more hungry because I was in a different position. I think now this year, I've been able to work on my development as far as like making reads and, just kind of finding a role that I would play up top and just kind of sticking to that more.
How was being with, you had a whole offseason with one organization, which you didn't have early in your career. How has that helped you, being with almost a calendar year now with just the Pacers organization?
I ain't gonna lie, it's been a blessing. Especially this summer, I got to stay here a lot and just work on my game. Just the whole setup that they have here is it's perfect for the players. And so, just being able to be in a consistent flow, a consistent rhythm, consistent routine, it's honestly a blessing.
I asked Enrique about your chemistry with him last year, so now your perspective on just the two-man game you guys have developed, both with the Pacers and down here.
Well, I'm with Reek a lot, obviously, because, we go back and forth a lot. So we do a lot of talking, whether we be playing or not, and then we do a lot of get-ready stuff together. So, me and Reek feed off each other. Reek has great energy. I have great energy as well. And then so with me trying to work on my development, that's working on passing and getting others involved. And so, Reek is a hard-playing guy, and he makes it easy for me, honestly.
What was his jersey ceremony like for all you guys?
No, that was cool to get to see where he came from, just to get to see what kind of kid he is, how his whole community is behind him, the things that he's done in his community, and just, to get your jersey retired, that's big time. I know I ain't got my jersey retired, so if I ain't got it, then, I got to chalk one up for Reek.
What have you thought of this Pacers turnaround? To you, what, if any, one thing is the biggest thing that's helped that team get going?
I think just our physicality, our energy, our will and want to win more. I think early in the season, I kind of, put reality in perspective for us. and we knew we weren't trying to be a losing team. We don't have losers in our locker room, and so it kind of was eating at everybody. And now that we're getting a lot of the guys back, they starting to get in rhythm. They starting to get in their routines. You're starting to see the old Pacers come back. Well, I should say the new Pacers, but everybody's playing well right now.
A lot has been made of a lot of specific things that have happened in the last month or so, but you guys had that 5 days off during the NBA Cup time to practice. How much do you think those specific days helped you guys? Because that's kind of right when your turnaround really happened.
I think it was kind of good for us. It was a good reset. We got to get in the lab a lot, kind of figure things out. We got to watch a lot of film and put a lot of stuff together. And like I said, we just put reality in perspective. Like, we got to be a winning organization. We're not settling for losing. We don't do that. So it was a good time to just kind of sit back, look at our reality, and then just make the change.
Where do you feel better as a player from start of the season to now?
I don't know. I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be hooping. I'm happy to just be in this organization. I'm happy that they like me. I love them. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's just about waking up every day and just being blessed to come into this facility and do what I do.
You got all your cars here now?
Nah, yeah, I do have my car here. I do have my car here.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. Q is very fun to talk to. He's always full of energy around a lot of everybody, basically, including the Pacers team. And again, you can't tell the story of this season without him. Like he was a part of them stabilizing at one point in the year when they won 3 games in a row. And I had to throw in a car question as a reminder for these interviews. Some of the quotes are for like other stories I'm working on or projects I'm doing. Some of them are for just getting to know guys better. Some of them are for very specific things about them. So that's why they're all over the place. But I know he's a car guy, and he didn't have his cars here last year, right when he got signed. So I wanted to follow up and get that one in. Let's also hear from an unaffiliated player, Dakota Mathias, and I'll share my own few little thoughts on the unaffiliated players to close out today's Locked On Pacers. And we're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Again, Locked On Jazz would be a good second listen. Hear about a team that just picked up one of the best trade asset picks in the league. 2023 unprotected Suns first. So many teams are betting against the Suns being any good in the future. At least a fifth of the league. The Pacers, one of them. The Pacers have that 2028 second rounder that could be swapped with Phoenix's they got in the Bilal Coulibaly, Jarris Walker trade. So many teams betting against the Suns' future, including the Indiana Pacers. Let's wrap up some Mad Ants chat with another interview. Dakota Mathias, many of you remember him from his time at Purdue. He also played for the 76ers and the Memphis Grizzlies. Last appeared in the NBA 2022. He's trying to get back. You'll hear him tell it in his own words. He is the leading scorer of every Mad Ants player who is unaffiliated via a 2A this season. 18.3 points a game. 8 threes a game. Attempted 40.7% from deep. Right? He was the most common player I got asked about when the Pacers waived Tristan Newton on could he get the Pacers 2A slot? And he has the best case of any Mad Ant. It's very rare that in season, like in the heat of the season, a 29-year-old gets that kind of promotion. But later in the season, potentially that would make sense to me. Or him getting a 10-day with another team would make total sense. He looks like a great shooter, right? That's what he was at Purdue, and what he has shown to be for much of his basketball life is a pretty good movement shooter. He did it for the Pacers in summer league. He was over 40% there as well. So he's played quite well. Shooting has been there. Rebounding's been decent. Jahlil Okafor, unaffiliated as well. He's at 17 points and 8.6 rebounds per game. 65% from the field. There are some games he looks really impactful, and some games he can't play very much, just given how the matchups work out. Defensively, he's not 2A eligible. Kyle Mangus is 16.5 points per game for him. He's making 41.4% of his 5.6 threes per game. He was a guest on this podcast last year just to sit down and interview with me. I really appreciate him for that. Him and Dakota have great chemistry together. It's very fun to watch him play. Another Indiana basketball kid growing up. Other just random standouts for me, Obadiah Noel. They just kind of recently added to the team. He's got some real juice with the ball. Like, his stats don't look awesome if you just looked him up, but he's been playing well. He started a game for them pretty recently. Cameron McGriff, he played 2 games for the Portland Trail Blazers a few years ago. He's their best defensive wing. I would say he's a good rebounder. He's played well. Johnny Furphy is totally affiliated, so he does not fit this segment. His shooting percentages have been dreadful, but he's averaging 11 rebounds a game. Both of his games I missed in the G League were his best 2 games. And Josiah Jordan-James, many of you remember him because he played in Summer League for the Pacers. He's Aaron Nesmith's good friend from growing up. He has been the most improved player on this team to me from the start of the season till now. His three-point percentage up to 47.7. So he's been getting a lot more playing time because of that. That is my assessment of what has gone on in Mad Ants Land. Now let's hear from Dakota Mathias.
So how's this opportunity to Mad Ants gone for you? I know in Summer League before Summer League you were talking about thinking about getting back to the NBA. What have you thought of this season and how your growth has gone for basketball?
It's been great. I'm loving it. I love the coaching staff, the players, the chemistry we have, and being able to play here, in front of the Pacers and their practice facility. It's been a good experience so far. I think we're really starting to play a lot better as a team. It's been fun. I'm really enjoying it.
Your shot's fallen this year at a high level. I know it's been your thing, being a shooter for forever. But where do you feel like you've gotten better as a player besides that?
I think it's all around, being able to share the ball when you get two on you, making the right play, getting in there, rebounding, assist, in the right position defensively, just kind of, an all-around game.
How does this experience compare to other G League spots you've been in terms of, I know you talked about facilities and all that, but team vibe, how you guys are playing, all that kind of stuff?
That's been great. Like I said, I'm really enjoying it. We got great chemistry, coaching staff's great. Facilities are top-notch, so they do a great job here, so I'm really glad I'm with the Mad Ants.
As you think about getting back into the NBA, what do you want to show or have displayed about you in this process?
I think for me it's just going to be continue to shoot at a high level, especially on the move. Being able to, if they run you off the line, have a mid-range, have a pull-up, being able to make the right reads and passes off that. So they've done a good job doing that so far. I give a lot of credit to the coaches and our team putting me in the position to do that, but just got to keep going.
How much has that Memphis and Philly experience helped you, even like G League, Summer League, all that kind of stuff, being mature, better than their guys, stuff like that?
Definitely. It's all about the process and the growth. You're never going to have it figured out, but continuing to, each day, each game, and each year in and out, each place you go, just kind of learning something and getting better and continue to add facets to your game.
You and Kyle have some very natural chemistry. Where'd that come from, or how long did that kind of take for you guys to develop?
It was pretty quick on. I think there's two guys that know how to play the game. We can both shoot, pass, and dribble. We can read the game, take advantage of different mismatches defensively. So I think just playing off each other and reading the game.
The Purdue part of this, you get to go up there very much at all, or has that been separate for you?
Our schedule's been kind of crazy the last couple of weeks. I haven't been up there yet, but hopefully here at the end of January, I think we have a couple days off and they have a home game, so I'll try to get up there.
You always played chewing gum while you play, and if so, why do you do that?
I really have. It's been a thing since college. I don't know. It keeps me engaged, and I like doing it. I don't know.
Do you like being back in Indiana at all from that Purdue connection? Is there any more to that for you?
Absolutely. My wife and I have a 4.5-month-old son now, so we actually live in Westfield. So this has been kind of a cool thing to be back in Indiana. It's easy for us. So yeah, it's obviously with the Purdue connection. There's various Purdue fans that come to games, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, we really enjoy it.
I was going to ask you about that, having a son this summer. How has that changed your outlook on basketball at all, if in any way?
Definitely, it's even more of a motivating thing. It's cool to have him here, to be able to, kind of be around the game. It's fun, and it's definitely been a change. But, it's been great. My wife's been awesome handling all that, and it's very fun.
What do you think of Quenton Jackson? You've played with him these last couple of games now, what he does for you guys?
Oh, man, obviously a great player, extremely fast, extremely skilled, great leader on the court, so I'm really enjoying playing with him.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. The last interview we have lined up with a Mad Ant affiliate or assignee on this podcast for a bit, but if I can get other guys or something works out for more of those interviews to appear here, that'll happen. I know you guys liked the first batch. I hope this one went the same in terms of popularity. Tomorrow on this podcast, hoping to have a guest talking about the Pacers in Paris, what to watch for from an events perspective. To the extent that can matter for stateside fans and in the game specifically, and what this could mean for the team, all sorts of stuff like that. And then we'll talk Pacers Spurs the next two shows after that before we get into next week with another gap in the Pacers schedule. Thank you guys for listening today. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony Tyrese. This podcast is there at Locked On Pacers. Hope you all are having a wonderful day. We will see you tomorrow.